187. The New War on Religion. Chalcedon Report number 149, January 1978. Alan N. Grover, Ohio's Trojan Horse, Greenville, South Carolina, Bob Jones University Press, 1977, 15, 154 pages. Also obtainable from Christian Schools of Ohio, 6929 West 130th Street, Suite 600, Cleveland, Ohio, 44130. The publication of this book is an important fact. It is the account of the attempt in Ohio by the statist educators to control Christian schools and of the resistance to that attempt. It is, however, much more. What the Christian schools of Ohio came to realize in their resistance was that they were engaged in a major battle of an emerging war of religion, humanism versus Christianity. In that battle, the major agencies of church, school, and state are in the hands of the enemy, so that the battle lines, while clear-cut, give a confused picture insofar as the forces of Christianity are concerned. The state or, quote, public, end quote, schools are religious schools, earnestly dedicated to the teaching of the religion of humanism. In their minimum standard, their curriculum, their accreditation, standards and policies for teachers and schools, and their stated purposes, they represent a faith alien to Scripture. Even more, they represent that faith which Scripture declares was first sent forth by the tempter and which constitutes original sin. Every man as his own God, knowing or determining for himself what constitutes good and evil. Genesis chapter 3, verse 5. It is indicative of the extent to which the churches have gone over to the enemy that CSO, Christian Schools of Ohio, had criticism in its stand from pastors and, quote, Christian, end quote, schoolmen. One of the opening guns of the assault on Christian schools was the case of Reverend Levi W. Wisner, to whom this book was dedicated, who was ably defended by attorney William Ball, already an established and great champion of Christian conscience. In the Canal Winchester case, attorney David C. Gibbs, Jr. began his active and extensive involvement. At issue has been the claim of the state to virtually universal jurisdiction. In opposition to this has been the declaration of the embattled Christians that Christ's kingdom, ecclesia or church, cannot be under anyone or anything that the state, like the church and school, must obey Jesus Christ. What the state demanded in Ohio, and is now demanding in other states, is a single culture, a humanistic one. It became apparent in Ohio that even small and struggling Christian schools educated their pupils more ably than the state schools. Where the basic skills are involved, the Christian schools are clearly superior. The demand for controls and for accreditation is a first step towards creating a single and humanistic culture. In Ohio, the state's minimum standards require the promotion and teaching of humanism in every aspect of the curriculum. As against this, the Reverend Levi Wisner held that a Christian school cannot compromise and must be independent. The regenerate man cannot place his school or children under the control of an unregenerate school system which promotes an alien faith. What came clearly into focus in the Ohio battles was the recognition by the men of CSO that all education is inescapably religious, and a religious neutrality is impossible in education. Every school will implicitly or explicitly witness to and indoctrinate its pupils in one religion or another. The rise of humanism and anti-Christianity in the United States of America and throughout the world has been a result of state control of education and the use of that control to promote humanism. Moreover, although many churchmen have refused to face up to this fact, the courts have recognized and stated that secular humanism is indeed a religion, and Alan Grover develops the implications of this fact. What we have thus in public education is a state religion, the religious establishment of humanism. To restore Bible reading and prayer to such schools would be simply to whitewash sepulchres. We do have, however, a considerable number of churchmen representing a major denomination of our time, the Church of the Whited Sepulchres. Grover analyzes the religion of humanism in all its forms, its two humanist manifestos in the state schools and in general thought. Its presuppositions are those of the tempter. Its faith is anti-Christian, and its plan of salvation involves, among other things, the deliverance of man from biblical faith. It is a religion of the now, of enjoying life in terms of self-realization rather than in terms of faith in and obedience to the triune God. Humanism is hostile to all godly authority. As Alan Grover summarizes it, it is man-centered, it is now-oriented, and it teaches faith in a world government as basic to man's hope. The Christian must not be conformed to this world, Romans chapter 12 verse 2, and all state controls on Christian schools, minimum standards, accreditation requirements and other controls have, at root, an implicit requirement and goal of conformity to humanism. One of the most pernicious of illusions is the faith that bumbling, corrupt and inefficient civil bureaucracies can set and maintain better standards for schools, medicine, businesses or anything else than can anyone else. This view does not represent experience, but rather a blind faith in the state as the omnicompetent agency. The issue, as Grover states it clearly, is not quality, but control. State intervention or control does not produce quality, quite the contrary. Educators themselves view education as a means of social control. Grover quotes John Dewey to this effect again and again. The goal of the school, Dewey held, is the formation of the proper social life, the securing of the right social growth, and the teacher is always the prophet of the true God and the usherer in of the true kingdom of God. Dewey's, quote, God, end quote, is really humanity. Education in origin was a church function. In essence, it always has been inescapably a religious function. The Christian school is a Christian ministry, and it cannot be made subject to status controls without a denial of the faith. As Grover points out, professional educators have endorsed control of society through education, and they have sought to control all of education to implement their goal. They have been sought to control religion in their grasp for power. Page 115. In this battle between Christians and humanists, the courts have closely examined the faith of the Christian defendants. At stake has been the issue of motivation and faith. Are the defendants motivated by a preference or by a conviction? If the decision is a matter of preference, the court refuses to honour the defendant's position. A man may prefer one course above another, but the alternative is then not an impossible one for him, but simply lower in acceptance. Conviction is another matter. It is faith, and the conscience of faith. Conviction is grounded in the mandate and law of God, which gives us no alternative but to obey. Is the independence of the Christian ministry in church and school grounded on a total dependence on and an obedience to Christ as Lord? If so, it is conviction, when a man's faith and a life in conformity to that faith are in evidence. It was clear to the Ohio Supreme Court that the Reverend Levi Wisner is a man of conviction, and hence his vindication. It is the expectation of major federal judges that one of the most common kind of cases appearing on appeal during the next decade will involve Christian schools. A battle is underway which will not disappear simply because men choose to ignore it. The importance of this book is that it sets forth the basic geography of that battle, and, as a result, it is necessary reading. It will be a major, if not the central battleground, because it will govern the future. If Christian schools continue to grow at their present rate, they will, in 20 years or less, have created a different kind of United States, one in which trained and informed Christians predominate, and one in which leadership will pass into the hands of Christians. The humanists recognize this clearly. This is the reason for their full-scale offensive in state after state to control and thereby suppress and destroy this strong and resurgent biblical faith. What is at stake is, first, the life or death of Christianity or humanism. Whichever triumphs educationally will prevail. The humanistic state schools are a growing disaster. The only way that disaster can be prevented from bringing on the death of humanism and its culture is to kill off the opposition, the Christian school movement, through controls. This is a fight for life for both parties. If the state schools prevail, then the destruction of our children will be affected. Second, The future of the United States is at stake. Humanism spells the degeneration and collapse of any country it commands. The Christian school movement is America's best hope for a Christian future. In this developing war of religion, there is no neutrality. The delusions of neutrality are ably exposed by the Reverend Alan N. Grover,